بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا مزيدا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. May Allah reward those who joined us today and those who organized such a great program. It's actually beautiful to see such a way and a tactic that I've never seen in no other masjid in trying to bring Islamic knowledge to the hearts of this ummah. And that's the topic that I was asked to talk about, bringing Islamic knowledge into the homes. You have to understand first the home. The home that you're in is described as a provision. It's described as a provision in the dua, Allahumma jannibna shaytan wa jannib shaytana ma razaqtana. Your household, your family is a gift from Allah. It's a gift from Allah because Allah said, يَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ إِنَاثًا وَيَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورِ. يَهَبُ means it's a gift. Your family is an oath by Allah. وَوَالِدٍ وَمَا وَلَدٍ. Your family is also a test from Allah. Just like someone who can't have kids, or someone, or a female can conceive kids, one who has kids is also tested by Allah. Because Allah said, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ. Your children and your wealth are fitna. Well, I understand if I don't have kids, it's a fitna because I want to have kids, and I'm tried and it's a test. But when I have kids, how is it a fitna? Because I'm obligated to teach them and I'm going to stand before Allah and Allah is going to ask me about them. So they are a test. Your family is that which you are entrusted with. You're entrusted with. When you're entrusted with something, Allah is going to ask you about it. Listen to this hadith, the hadith of a warning. ما من عبد يسترعيه الله رعية يموت يوم يموت وهو غاش لرعيته إلا حرم الله عليه الجنة. If you're entrusted, and a mom is entrusted with her children, and the hadith said so, and the father is entrusted with his kids, and there's portions where the kids are entrusted with their parents. If you meet Allah deceiving anyone you're entrusted with, the smell of heaven will be banned upon you. Dangerous. And you know what? Deceiving them, it could be any tiny thing that you don't do of their rights. And one of the biggest rights is teaching them the Islamic knowledge. Sometimes, especially now, the youth pick up stuff on the internet. They go teach their parents. It happens a lot. The parents know the Tawheed and foundations and Sunnah and Sirah. They teach the kids. That's an obligation. Look at Yaqub alayhi salam. His worry on his deathbed, إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي. His worry on his deathbed, come here kids, what are you going to worship after me? Ibrahim alayhi salam, when Allah declared him an imam and certified him an imam, imam is a big title. When he was certified as imam, he said, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. And I want, oh Allah, protect my kids on this path, guided path. You know the story of Noah. When he got on the ship, he said, رَبِّ إِنَّ ابْنِي مِنْ أَهْلِي. I want my son. He wanted his son to be guided. So this family bond is a strong bond that Allah said about it in the Quran. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Ibn Mas'ud said, if you hear يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, open your ears, because it's something He wants you to listen to do, or something to stay away from. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Protect yourself and your kids. He could have said protect yourself, period. He said you and your descendants and your kids. Then the verses go on to tell you, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. You know what وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ? I don't know anyone here who would see a parent who's cold and not cover him with a blanket. Or moms always walking around the house making sure her kids are warm, making sure they got their needs. You know, if a mom knows that her daughter or her son have a simple toothache or a fever, she's not going to sleep the night because she's worried about it. What's more important than that, wallahi al-azim, is protecting them from what this verse said, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. More important than that is to protect them from being the charcoal of Jahannam. What kind of person would protect them from a simple fever, but won't protect them from being the charcoal of hellfire? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. May Allah protect all of us from that. That's what the Quran came to establish. And if you look in the Sahaba, Zayd ibn Haritha, young boy, 13 years old, walks in Badr, tries to join the Prophet ﷺ in the army. The Prophet said, "You're too young." He goes back to his mother. His mother said, "You read and recite Quran because then you'll impress the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ." So he began memorizing Quran quickly before the battle. And he had a good memory. When the Prophet ﷺ, look at the mom's role. Look at the mom's wisdom in her mom's role. When he went back to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet was impressed at how quickly he memorized. So he sent him to learn the language of the Jewish people. He became the translator of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He learned the Hebrew language in 17 days. In our history, it says he learned it like he was born speaking it. In 17 days. Then he learned in a few more days Assyrianiya. And then in a few more days he learned a third language. 13-year-old boy. His mom told him to go learn. That's the effect of it. And Khatib al-Baghdadi said, Ibrahim ibn Adham, a scholar of hadith, one of his specialties was hadith. He says Ibrahim ibn Adham used to say, my father, every time I memorize a hadith, he'd give me 1 dinar, and that's what encouraged me to become a scholar of hadith and love hadith. And if you look, you know, I noticed that it was nearly all sisters over here. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure where the brothers, or was this, I don't know how it's organized or structured, but there was many sisters, and that's good. And that's good, that's impressive, because Aisha, you know, Zuhri said Aisha is the most scholarly woman of her time. You know who was in her time? The Sahaba, the men. The Zuhri's opinion about Aisha is that she was the most knowledgeable of her time. And let me tell you the story about Fatima bint Abbas. She was a teenage student of Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, he had a scholar, his student is Ibn al-Qayyim. If you read Ibn Taymiyyah's books, 30-some volumes that reached us that are widespread, but there's more that didn't reach us or is not published yet. 32 volumes. Ibn al-Qayyim said, listen to this. Ibn al-Qayyim said, I used to see my scholar writing as if all the knowledge was in front of him. He'd sit and write without ever using any reference. I read al-Fatawa from cover to cover maybe 3 times. Wallahi, I get a headache every time I'm reading it, because you got to break it down and analyze it. And you read it a second time, you don't know what he's trying to talk about. He's so sophisticated. It reminds me about a brother, I don't know if he's here, I can't backbite him, if he's here I would have said about him. He talks above my head every time I talk to him. His language, his sophistication, his knowledge is way above our intellect today. But this, why I tell you this, Fatima bint Abbas, when she used to go and ask him questions after the class, you know what? In Bidayah wa Nihaya for Ibn Kathir said, he used to prepare for her questions. He used to prepare for all those books you never wrote. You're going to prepare for this teenage Fatima bint Abbas. He said about her, I never seen anyone memorize Al-Mughni like Fatima bint Abbas. He also said, I never seen anyone do the da'wah she did from Masr all the way down to Damascus. This was a one woman that did that. More so, since there was sisters here. How many more minutes do I have? That's it? Okay, let me... Ibn Na'im in Al-Hulya said, listen to the story. There was a man named Abu Wada'a. He was the #1 student of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. He always comes from the outskirts every single day and sits in the class of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. One of the imams comparable to the 4 imams. So for a few days he didn't show up. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib said, where were you? He said, my wife died, and and I was busy burying her, and I loved her. And he went out complaining to his sheikh. He said, did you get married? Back in the days, when their wife died one day, they'd get married the next day. So he said, did you get married? He said, no, sheikh, I didn't get married. He said, who's going to marry me? All I got is 3 dinars. No, all I could collect is 3 dinars. Is that you don't have 3 dinars? All I have is 3 dinars. Back then, back in the real days, the ulama and the shuyukh were the poorest. It's a different thing today. Back in the old days, they were the most humblest and poorest. So he didn't have any money on him. He said, I don't even have 3 dinars. Maybe I can collect 3 dinars. Who's going to give me a wife? He said, I'm going to give you a wife, my daughter. On the spot, he asked his daughter. He brought witnesses. He married his daughter. This is a real story. He went back excited. He was fasting. This was after Asr. He said, this is him. He said, I had bread and some oil, and I started breaking my fast, and I was excited, thanking Allah that I'm married now. And as I'm breaking my fast, someone knocks on the door. I said, who? He said, Sa'id. He said, Wallahi, every Sa'id came to my mind except Sa'id ibn Musayyib. My sheikh coming to my house. My sheikh, he says, never knew but the alley from his house to the masjid for 40 years. And now he's coming to my house. Behind him was a tall woman standing behind him. He said, you married my daughter and I didn't want you to sleep alone tonight. Here she is. That's how the wisdom of a man who chose another one for his knowledge. You know what happened? He quit going to the durus. Why did he quit going to the durus? Why? She was beautiful, yes. But that's not why. She was just as knowledgeable as her father. He was going the next day, she said, sit down, everything my father has, I have it. Then, after 1 month, he went to his father-in-law. His father-in-law smiled at him. He said, how is it? He said, everything in my house makes a beloved person happy and makes an enemy envious. Meaning everything's perfect in the house, alhamdulillah. And he went on learning from his wife instead of from his sheikh. Look at that. A woman, if you know Sa'id, go read who Sa'id ibn Musayyib is. If a woman had the knowledge of Sa'id ibn Musayyib, that's astonishing. Imam Malik had a daughter. Do you know that she used to sit behind the door where they would recite her father's compilation, Muwatta Imam Malik, to her father, and every time they make a mistake, which her father would not catch on, she would correct it and her father would say yes. She was a teenager. This is by the way, he had also a son who was astray a little bit, Imam Malik. You didn't know that. His daughter was a alima, but his son was a little bit off the track. This is the way they revive Islam in the hearts of their children and in their family. And alhamdulillah, this is something we say. But let me tell you one thing. Keep in mind, sincerity is important when attaining knowledge. That's one of the most important things. Because when one has knowledge, he begins to become arrogant sometimes. And also, some people, it's a money maker these days. More than a lawyer and a doctor. You know, you're being a sheikh is above a lawyer and a doctor today. And so, you gotta purify your intention. Our intention is for the sake of Allah. And you gotta clean your heart every time you do anything. When you come up here, when you're studying at home. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. It's wanna make it, or learning knowledge. It's better than praying your nafilah salah. If you don't purify your knowledge, your heart, from lack of sincerity, what happens with the heart is that lack of sincerity is like strings. Sins to the heart are black dots. They cover the heart, and it becomes a black heart unless one repents. Lack of sincerity is like strings. It surrounds the heart. Little string, a little string, a little string. If you don't purify the heart, what happens with little strings? What happens with little strings when they're together? It's a rope that covers the heart. And that's when the heart no longer is working for the sake of Allah. When Imam Abu Hanifa, they asked him, how did you attain your knowledge? He said, I attained it by saying Alhamdulillah. They said, how? He said, Allah said, وَلَا إِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you thank me, I'm going to give you more. Every time I learn something, I say Alhamdulillah. And there, let me tell you one more thing. Can I have a few more minutes, please? A few more minutes, couple more minutes. Jazakallah khair. Okay. You know the author of this book that you mentioned several times, Ar-Rahiq al-Makhtoum? Al-Rahiq al-Makhtoum, the seal nectar. Mubarak Furi. Safiuddin Mubarak, that was my teacher in Medina. Let me tell you something. This is a summarized version of the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Summarized. This is a summarized version. We have bigger ones like Al-Bidayah wa Nihayah. We got other ones, and we got summarized. This is summarized version. The Shaykh was my teacher in Medina. I used to go to his house almost every day. Let me ask you a question. I can name you today, right now, maybe over 8 books from contemporary ulama that are in the same size as Mubarak Furi's book. But you know that it's the most widespread book on the face of the earth in the seerah today? Do you know that? Why? Can someone tell me why? Can someone tell me why? Wallahi. Wallahi, our Shaykh said, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Our Shaykh said sincerity, and that's the truth. You know where he lived? He was working in the University of Medina, and they paid big money over there for the professors back in the days. You know where he lived? He lived with 4 construction workers in an apartment with 4 bedrooms. I wouldn't live in that apartment. Wallahi, I wouldn't live in that apartment. He lived in there. His mattress was about this thin. You know what he did with his money? He gave it for the sake of Allah. He told me 1/3 of my money goes to my family. I don't think many people in the world know this fact about the Shaykh. 2/3 of his money used to go for the sake of Allah. And back then there was the Soviet problems over there, and he used to help them. The Soviet problems in the 80s. Rahmatullah alayhi, he died some years ago. Let me also tell you that King Faisal gave him a big reward for that book. And you know he gave every penny of that for the sake of Allah. That's why Mubarak Furi's book is among the top, #1 today in the world. It's been translated into many numerous languages. Why? Why? What about those other ones? I have another Shaykh who taught me in the Haram. He wrote a near identical book like that. It's more eloquent. I don't want to name his name so I won't degrade anyone. But why is it not as spread as that Mubarak Furi? Because of sincerity. Let me conclude. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا. You know what الباقيات الصالحات? المال والبنون, your wealth and your children are beauties of this world. وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ, the everlasting. Among some of the mufassirin, they said the everlasting is teaching your kids Islam. Why? Because of the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said there was a man who was in his grave and his rank was raised. And he asked, "Oh Allah, why is my rank raised?" He said, "Because you left in the womb of your mother a righteous son that made dua for you." And even though some scholars authenticated that, some said it's weak, there's a more authentic hadith that all of you know. One of the deeds that will be ongoing is a righteous kid that makes dua. If you teach Alhamdulillah, if you teach Allahu Akbar, that simple thing, every time your children and their children say it until the judgment day, that's Al-Baqiyatu Salihat. May Allah reward you, may Allah protect you, may Allah make your knowledge beneficial. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.